Lesson 15.2, Quadrilaterals. Once again, this lesson is pretty much about vocabulary and the slight differences between the different types of quadrilaterals. So please pay close attention to the left side of this whiteboard to make sure that you're able to understand the little differences that will make a big difference on your test. So let's look at the vocabulary first. The first one is parallelogram. Parallelogram has something in it that kind of tells you what it is. The word parallel. Okay, it's two sets of parallel sides with equal length. This would be a picture of a parallelogram. You can see these marks to say that this and this, those sides are congruent. We might say that they're equal. Same with the bottom and the top. Those are all going to be this line is parallel to this line, and this line is parallel to that line, meaning that they're traveling in the same direction and they'll never cross each other. The second word is trapezoid. A trapezoid only has one pair of parallel sides. So looking at this picture, this is not going to be parallel with that, right? This one's going this way, this one's coming this way, but this one and this one, the top and the bottom, are parallel and will travel like that and never touch forever. The third one is rectangle, and you're probably all saying, I know what a rectangle is, I don't know why you're wasting my time. But let's look at the subtle nuances of what makes it a rectangle and kind of a hint of how we can take one shape and use it to look like another one. It is a parallelogram with four right angles. What that's telling us is all rectangles are parallelograms. But a parallelogram is not always going to be a rectangle. For a parallelogram to be a rectangle, it has to have four right angles. So each one of these corners or vertices would be a right angle. Again, just like in this picture from the parallelogram, the top and the bottom are congruent or the same length, and both sides are congruent or the same length. We have that in the rectangle also. Rhombus. Rhombus is another form of parallelogram. So again, all rhombus or rhombi are parallelograms, but not all parallelograms are rhombi, and we'll talk about why that is. It's a parallelogram with all four sides the same. If you look at this, those four sides are not all the same. And here they are, and I only drew one line because they were all the same. In the other ones, I drew one line for those two, saying that those are the same, and then two lines to show that these two are the same. Now the rhombus we've always looked at, and it's almost like a square on its side. And speaking of that, the next one is square. A square is a rectangle with all four sides the same. So again, we look at this picture and we see this picture. It kind of looks just like this picture, but just condensed. And it really is. All squares are rectangles, and you know what? They're also going to be rhombus. But the difference is a rhombus is going to be tilted off to the side, and it's not going to have four right angles. A square is going to have four right angles. So each one of these vertices is going to be a right angle. All right, let's look at some practice. And again, it might be a good idea to pause the video after looking at each picture and see if you can come up with what it is. Number one, we look at that and we notice that it has two sets of parallel lines. So it could be a parallelogram, it could be a rectangle, it could be a square, it could be a rhombus. So let's look a little bit more. We see that there are four right angles, so that means it's not a parallelogram and it's not a rhombus. So now it's either a rectangle or a square. And we notice that the top and the bottom are the same, but the sides, each left and right side, is a little bit different. So that means it matches this picture down here, and number one is a rectangle. Let's look at number two. We notice that this side and this side are not parallel, right? This one goes up and down, this one's at an angle. But the top and the bottom are both going to be parallel. So it has one pair of parallel sides. So let's look at which one of our words has one set of parallel lines. Parallelogram has two. Trapezoid, only one pair of parallel lines. That tells us that number two is a trapezoid. All right, let's look at number three. Okay, number three has these two lines look like they're parallel. These two lines kind of look like they're parallel. So it has two sets of parallel lines. Does that mean that it's a parallelogram, or a rectangle, or a rhombus? It's not a quadrilateral. This was a trick question. I hope you caught it. But if you notice, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So that is a, right, it's a pentagon. Let's look at number 4. Okay, so we have parallel lines on the top and the bottom, and parallel lines on the sides. So we have, again, two sets of parallel lines. It could be a parallelogram, it could be a rectangle, a rhombus, or a square. All four sides are congruent, so that means it's going to be either a rhombus or a square. Which one could it be? Well, I know a square has 4 right angles, and this is clearly not a right angle there. So that's telling me that this is a rhombus. And I was right. If you have any questions, please make sure you ask or you join one of our small groups. If not, have a great night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.